Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Enter, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a different kind of tier list. We're going to be making one for the Assault game mode. Of course, basically every tier list ever made for Smite is only considering Conquest, but Assault has definitely its own meta that I think is worth making a tier list for. A lot of other game modes, maybe you could do it with Joust and obviously Duel as well, but I don't really play Duel myself. But a lot of the more casual game modes, there isn't too much point in making like a full-on tier list for it, but Assault definitely has its own unique niche of a meta where certain gods are really strong in Assault when they might not be in other game modes. And I thought I'd make a tier list for Assault, so let me know if you guys enjoy this kind of thing. Maybe I could make these, on a semi-regular basis. Probably not as regular as I make Conquest meta videos, but I could continue these if you guys enjoy it. So with Assault being so different, there are a few things you're looking for in an Assault god that you aren't necessarily looking for in other game modes. So here's a little list of things I'm kind of keeping in mind when I'm placing these gods on what will make them strong in Assault. So first up, of course, just a generally strong god. If the god is good, they're going to be good in Assault as well. That's just like a given, really. Strong poke is very important because Assault is very much a poke-heavy game mode. Obviously, there are team fights where you can really kind of get in there, but for the most part, you're going to need really strong poke to be successful in Assault because it's a lot of kind of like a standoff, clearing minions, poking out the enemy until they get low enough that you can kind of do an all-in, and you burn away their healing, their meditations, all that kind of stuff with strong poke. So having really good poke, very good in Assault, meaning a lot of the gods with strong range, a lot of the mages and hunters are going to be really good, and a lot of the assassins aren't necessarily going to be so good unless they specifically have strong poke for an assassin. So these next three kind of come hand in hand, I suppose. There's self-sustain, team-wide healing, and healing reduction. So obviously, you can't back in Assault, you can't heal yourself from the fountain, so you're going to need some kind of sustain. Be that through items, like some gods will have really good use of lifesteal items, and that gives them a bit of self-sustain, but a lot of gods just have built-in self-sustain in their kit that's really strong. Especially self-sustain that's easy to activate, so either you just press a button and you heal, or it's very easy to get it. Self-sustain that relies on hitting a god, or it's lifesteal is a little bit less reliable. And then obviously team healers. Healers in Assault are split into 3 different tiers, but any god that can team heal is going to be significantly better in Assault than any other god because just being able to heal your teammates that don't necessarily have self-sustain is always going to be really good. And then healing reduction, obviously very good against the lifesteal and team healing that I just talked about, as well as meditation and also the healing pods as well. Any god with built-in healing reduction in their kit, especially if it's a strong, long-duration healing reduction, is just going to be really good. Next up, we have strong AoE. Obviously, Assault is a 5v5 game mode where you're basically all in the same general location, and having really strong AoE that's going to easily be able to hit multiple enemies, especially if they're grouping up for meditation or around the healing pods or something like that. Having strong AoE damage is going to be really good for this game mode. Next up, we have big crowd controls and beads burner gods, so gods like Ares and stuff like that can really easily pull. People get meditation very often in this game mode and forgo beads at least until level 12, and so you can often get very big value off of huge CCs that normally will get instantly beads in a normal game mode, but you can maybe get away with them a bit more in Assault. And finally, gods with strong level 5 fights. Often Assault isn't decided in the first fight, but the first big Assault fight is really huge in defining what team's going to have a lead going throughout the game. So having gods with really strong level 5 ultimates or just a generally strong level 5 fight is also going to be really good for them, and we'll bump them up the tier list a little bit. And of course, gods that lack all these things that I've just mentioned are going to be lower on the tier list. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for in a lot of the Assault gods, so let's just get into actually placing the gods here. So starting with Achilles, I would say Achilles is a solid A tier god in Assault. He's nothing too crazy, but he does have some solid built-in self-sustain. He's a tank, which is generally pretty good in Assault. You can build him tanky, you can kind of get in there. He has a stun, and Execute is also really good. Just in general, there's nothing really wrong with Achilles. He's very solid if you want to play him, but he's not necessarily among the best of the best in this game mode. Agni, he's either A or S. I'm not really sure if I want to drop him in S necessarily. I think for now I'll put him in A, but potentially he might move up depending on where I place some of the gods throughout the video. He has insanely strong poke, obviously that triple meteor, it could just absolutely blow people up, or generally just use it for poke, and the ranged AoE stun as well. His 2 is a little bit close range for my liking in terms of Assault poking. It's not a great poke tool. You do put yourself in a little bit of danger of getting CC'd out if you're going into relatively close range to be able to hit that flame wave. And he also has no built-in self-sustain, which is a little bit of a knock to him as well. He's not great with lifesteal because all of his abilities are AoE, and generally doesn't make that good use of mage lifesteal. So he's going to be relying on either sustain from pods, meditation, or his teammates, and especially considering he has no beads in his ultimate, if he's going meditation, he's going to get a little bit punished by some of the strong beads burner gods like Ares. So he does have quite a few significant weaknesses in this game mode, does Agni, but he also has some very strong strengths, mainly in his poking. AMC, probably our first S tier god. I wouldn't say he's quite S+. I think there's going to be some gods that are significantly stronger than AMC, but he's definitely one of the best gods in this game mode for sure. Really strong poking, really good burst damage, decent sustain actually. The hives, the HP 5 that it gives you is actually really strong. Whether it's HP 5 or healing, I don't actually know, but basically the same thing. The regen that the hives give you are really strong, and it's very easy to keep your hives protected in Assault. You know, you just put one at the back of your tower. There's not really any chance the enemy are going to actually get to that one, and you can just have the constant sustain going up and that little bit of attack speed as well. Yeah, pretty much everything you want in an aggressive Assault damage god. Strong poke. I guess he lacks a bit of AoE damage, but other than that, really good poke, really good sustain, just a super strong Assault god. But here's our first S+ god. Obviously, no one expected Apuash to be anywhere lower than S+. Probably arguably the best Assault god, but there are a few that might contest him later on. I'm sure you guys probably know what I'm talking about already, but we'll get to them in a second. He's in a very similar vein to AMC, but he just kind of does what AMC does better. So he has really good poke with his 1-3-2 combo that just absolutely obliterates people on like a really low cooldown that you can just keep vomiting that on the enemy team and getting really strong poke. He has some of the best self-sustain of any damage dealer in the fact that you can just eat his corpses up. You just throw them against the wall, you keep eating them, you restore mana and health, and you just basically do that until you're back at full health. It's very hard to keep Apuash poke down for this reason, and because poke is so strong in Assault and the fact that he can't heal, he can just heal up to full over a long amount of time. Granted, he doesn't instantly heal to full, but if you just leave an Apuash unchecked, he's going to eventually be back at full health, and your poke didn't actually mean anything. And of course, his damage is in pretty strong AoEs as well. It's relatively easy to hit multiple people with his 1-3-2 combo, and of course, his ult covers like the entire lane, basically. Especially if enemies are grouping up for meditation or healing pods, you just 1-3-2 on them, and then they get stunned if they were healing. I think the healing is only through abilities, not through meditation and healing pods, but yeah, if the enemy like groups up for a heal around their healer or something, you land your 3 on them, you get to stun them. He basically has everything you could possibly want in an Assault god. He has strong anti-heal, the stun on healers as well, strong poke, great sustain. Basically, Apuash is one of the best gods in Assault. I think everyone knows this. I don't really need to spend too much time explaining why he's so good, but yeah, he definitely is. Amaterasu, probably similar in strength to Achilles, I would say, so I'll probably drop her in the same tier. She could potentially be S, but I wouldn't say she's as good as like AMC or anything like that. Decent sustain from the one. It's not great, but it's like a little bit of self-sustain. No one's really going to complain about that. Her poke is okay with the 2, but not really that amazing. But she's really good for like an all-in teamfight tank. Her ultimate, of course, one of the best big AoE teamfight CC abilities in the game, and if you can hit multiple people with that, especially when they don't have beads because it's Assault, you're going to get some really strong value out of that. So just one of the better tanks in Assault, I would say. And her probably also A tier. I do want to put him a little higher because he is really good, but he's not as good as AMC. Maybe I should just move AMC up, man. He's like definitely one of the better gods. The thing is, he's not as good as Apuash. Maybe I need another tier here, dude. I feel like I need another tier because I want AMC up here and Anhur up here, but then Apuash has to move up. Apuash is just definitely better than AMC. Like, maybe Apuash needs his own tier. Let me add that. All right, there we go. So we have the broken tier above here, which we're going to drop Apuash and maybe a couple of other gods in as well. Basically, there's only going to be a very small handful of gods up in this tier, and then S+ is going to be reserved for just like really, really like the kind of the best of the best that aren't completely broken. So yeah, this looks better because I didn't really feel good having these 3 gods in the same tier in any way. I think like Apuash is definitely better than AMC, and AMC is definitely better than Anhur, and Anhur is definitely better than these gods. In fact, maybe now I've moved things around a bit, potentially like Achilles goes up here. Amaterasu maybe could as well. But yeah, this feels better when I have a bit more flexibility to place things in different tiers. Back to Anhur though, really strong poke of course, he's a hunter, so he's going to have those range basics. Obviously Impale really good as well. His ultimate super insane damage can be done from really big range. Anhur's main problem is that he doesn't have any sustain, which is kind of like a small issue. But other than that, he's a really solid Assault god for sure. Next up we have Anubis, probably his ARS, maybe he's S? His poking is decent, but not that amazing, because his 1 you have to get in very close range to use, and it's quite risky, so like his main poking is just going to be 2 into 3, which is decent, but not amazing, but his all-in potential is really good in those big team fights. Like, he can kind of just pick a target and delete them, especially if they don't have beads, which a lot of gods don't early on in Assault. You know, that 2-3 ult, they're just going to straight up die. His sustain is also pretty good, considering his passive allows him to make really good use of items like Bancroft's Talon. Just in general, probably one of the better mages for Assault, I would say, but not like super insane. I won't put him any higher than S. Ao Kuang, underrated god in Assault in my opinion. Obviously he's basically an assassin, and assassins in general are pretty bad in Assault, and his poke is pretty terrible. But I'm going to drop him in A tier, I think. Honestly, having the execute is really valuable in Assault. You can build him a little bit tanky, and he gets kind of away with a little bit more than he normally would in Assault. And his poking isn't terrible. You can kind of just like run up 2-3, throw the dragons, and that's like decent burst poke, and then you can 1 out if you need to. Like, his poke isn't as bad as a lot of the other assassins in the game. And obviously having that execute is really valuable. Aphrodite Aphrodite, S+, I think I'm not going to put, like, standard healers in Broken, to be honest. I think there's, like, gods like Apoash really deserve kind of their own tier there, but we will drop Aphrodite in S+. Obviously, one of the strongest healers in the game. You know, she's in tier 1 of healers, along with Hel and Yamoja, I think, are the only 2 other tier 1 healers, so obviously one of the best healers in the game. Healing in Assault is super strong, being able to heal your own teammates is even stronger. Her poke is, like, okay, it's not really that great, because her 2 you have to get in very close range for, and her 3 is a little bit unreliable sometimes unless you confirm it off of the stun. Her ult is nice to keep teammates alive and stuff, but in reality, she's just a really strong healer, and that's the reason she's up here. Apollo will drop in A, no built-in self-sustain, okay poke with the 1, I suppose. His ultimate's not that useful in Assault because it's very telegraphed, everyone can see you using it if you're using it to engage in a team fight. And I guess you can fly back from Fountain to lane with it and kind of surprise people sometimes, but it's not that great. But he is still a Hunter, still has decent poke, and can build some decent self-sustain with lifesteal as well. Obviously, Hunter's one of the better users of lifesteal. Arachne, probably going to be our first D-tier god, I think. As I've been alluding to throughout the video, Assassins really aren't that good in Assault. They have no poke. Generally, they have no poke. Some Assassins have okay poke, but Arachne, definitely one of the weaker Assassins in Assault in a class that is already weak. Obviously, as I mentioned, zero poke to speak of. She really has to, like, all-in her target, and doing that in Assault is just going to get you killed a lot of the time. She doesn't really work tanky either, so you can't even, like, build her hybrid. Like some Assassins, you can kind of build Bruiser hybrid and get away with it. But yeah, Arachne just pretty damn terrible. The only thing she really has going for her is sustain, and even that, it's sustain that you have to run in and hit a target with on her 1, and oftentimes the sustain you regain from your 1, you lose from taking poke by running in to try and, like, land your 1, so it's kind of a bit of a pointless ability in a way. Ares, S+, obviously a tank. Tanks are really good. An ultimate that is death if you don't beads. Really insane in Assault because everyone has meditation early on. You know, really good against a lot of the top Assault gods as well, like AMC and Apoash that don't have beads on their ultimate. So, like, they're not going to have beads early on. They don't have CC immunity on the ultimate. Ares is going to farm those kind of gods in Assault, like, absolutely farm them. His poke is actually not that bad, considering he's a Guardian and they typically don't have great poke, because his 1, like, just is decent range and does so much damage early on. Benefits extra from building the Sovereign Heart Ward auras to give your teammates regen because he gets a bit of that extra power. Just a really insane Assault god, to be honest. Artemis will drop in S. Really good team fighting ultimate for when people do engage. One of the best level 5 fight ultimates in the entire game. Actually can just stun the whole team and do a load of damage, cause an absolute shit ton of disruption. Traps are not great, and her poke isn't amazing. Like, the 3 does pretty little damage, but she does have strong basic attacks, and once she gets to late game, she's going to be really good. Just in general, a pretty solid Hunter. Artio, I think probably should go to S+, to be honest. I don't think she's quite as good as the other gods I do have up in S+, but she's definitely better than the gods that are in S. So I think a lower end of S+ placement for Artio is pretty fair. Her poke is pretty solid. You know, she has the 3 in Druid form, the 1 in Druid form. Obviously has a bit of team healing with the 1 in Druid form as well, and some self-healing on the 3. So, like, her sustain is really good. Her CC is solid. You know, being able to cripple people out in Assault. They're not going to have bees to be able to get away from that cripple. I'm going to be mentioning that a lot throughout the video. I'm sorry, but, like, it's a huge part of Assault that people don't have bees until level 12 a lot of the time. Obviously, you can buy beads, but then you forgo meditation, and so if you know, if the enemy team has an Ares, you're probably going to buy beads against it, but that means you have less meditations on your team and you're in general weaker, so he is still making you play weaker. And Artio's similar, you know, that 6-second cripple, absolutely deadly if you can't beads it. Has a stun as well, just a really solid tank with good self-sustain and a bit of team healing as well. Also worth noting with Artio that she doesn't count as a healer for Assault. A lot of the gods with, like, similar kind of healing to hers, where it's like a little bit of in combat, kind of you hit an enemy and your team heal. They count as healers, even in more of, like, the lower tiers. Like, she's not even a tier 3 healer, she straight up doesn't count as a healer, so you can have an Artio and the enemy team won't have any kind of healing for that to compensate, and, like, granted her 1 isn't the most amazing team healing in the world, but it is some team healing, so that's definitely going to bump her up the tier list a bit. Athena will drop in S. Her ultimate obviously not very useful in Assault because the rotation potential of it is kind of negated. Similar to Apollo, yeah, you can ult out of spawn or whatever, and it's not actually as bad now that they buffed it to give it damage mitigation while she's channeling. You can kind of use it mid-team fight, and it's a little bit better for that use. But the main reason Athena is just, like, really solid in Assault, and even though she doesn't have that great of an ultimate, she's still really good, is that her taunt. Like, it's similar to Ares in that, like, if you get taunted without beads, you're probably going to die, or you're at least going to take a ton of poke damage. And Athena can very easily just dash in, taunt, either burn beads, or if they don't have beads, kill people with it. Really solid frontline tank. No self-sustain or team healing or or anything like that, but just really solid in general. Atlas, probably in the same tier as Athena. I think Atlas could potentially be bumped up one more as well, but obviously Atlas 2 is very similar to Athena 2 in that if you get hit by it, you're kind of dead, and it forces beads in a similar kind of way. But I think Atlas's base kit is like slightly better than Athena's, to be honest, especially because his ultimate is generally more useful in those team fights, being able to shred protections and power really good. But I don't think it warrants him being upper tier, to be honest, but it could. If you wanted to, you could probably put Atlas in S. He's definitely on the higher end of, in S+, sorry, he's definitely on the higher end of the S tier. A Wheelix, I think I'll throw a Wheelix in B, for the sole reason that if you have like one reliable knockup on the team, she becomes really good. Like with a reliable knockup on the team, she's like A tier. Without one, she's like C or D tier. So I think I'll drop her in B for now. Generally, if you don't have a reliable knockup, just reroll this. But if you do have that, she can be solid because that ultimate can just pick off a target and kill them without beads, as I keep mentioning. Baba Yaga, we'll drop in S. I think she's a solid mage, to be honest. Pretty good poke overall with the potion and the one. Her ultimate does insane damage, especially on enemies that are trying to group up for healing or whatever in a team fight, which is really good. And while the cabin won't be moving as much as it would be in a conquest game mode, you're not going to be building stacking items for the most part. So, I mean, that does nerf her a little bit in a way, but it also buffs her in a way because the cabin can continually give you sustain because it's not being eaten by stacks. So she does have a little bit of self-sustain in that regard, which makes her pretty solid. Bacchus will drop in S, very similar to a lot of the other ones I put in S here, a lot of the other tanks like Athena and Atlas. He just has a really solid engage and great CC that can mean the absolute death of people. Mana issues slightly with the fact that he has Chug, and it's gonna eat a lot of his mana, and he doesn't have any self-sustain, but he has also some healing reduction on his 3 to make up for that. 50% healing reduction on that is really good for team fighting. Bagasura, is he C or is he D? I think he's probably just D. Like, this god, a lot of what he wants to do just doesn't really work in Assault. Of course, he's mainly like wanting to like eat jungle camps and stuff. In Conquest, he can't really do that. It's very hard to get up to the wave and actually eat a minion, especially if your teammates are just like insta-clearing it and not even letting you do that. And then, of course, his ultimate becomes significantly weaker if he's not eaten a decent amount of minions before he uses it. Zero poke to speak of, has to all in, has some self-sustain, which is why I was thinking he should maybe go into C, but as I've said, that self-sustain is actually sometimes very hard to get off. It's similar to Arachne's 1 in that, like, you'll run up to the wave and you'll eat a minion, you heal like 200, but then you get hit by like Scylla's 2 or something on the way in, because you're having to run into melee range to use that heal, and then you just lose all the health that you actually, like, gained back from using the 2, so it kind of doesn't really do anything for you. Baron Samdi, definitely an S+ god, really solid in Assault, counts as a tier 3 healer, so unlike Artio, who, like, the enemy won't get a healer, if you get Baron, the enemy team will get either Ola, Cupid, Baron, or Shiva in return, so, like, they will get some healing in the way that Baron is able to heal his team. But obviously, a very solid team heal with us too, to be honest. Very easy to confirm because you just throw the 3 and then you throw the 2. His ultimate is almost like a single target Ares ultimate in a way, in that you can just like pull multiple people out of position and then end up stunning one of them. So super solid against teams that don't have beads. His poke is insane as well. Like your 3-2-1 combo does so much damage if you're building in full damage. You can even build Baron Tank as well and completely get away with it. Very versatile, does a lot of things you want from an Assault god. Pretty close to being in broken tier, to be honest. I think if he didn't count as a healer, he might even move up there. Baron, really strong god in Assault. Bastet, C, she could even be B, to be honest. Bastet is definitely one of the better assassins. Maybe I will even put her in B. This is probably the highest I'm going to place, like, pretty much any assassin. I mean, Ao Kuang might count, so maybe, like, there might be a couple of assassins in A tier. And I mean pure assassins, gods that, like, assassins, like, that have really strong ranged poke or that can be built tanky might be a little higher than that, but standard ability burst assassins and stuff like that probably won't be much higher than this. Bastet, she's one of the better ones, though. She has a little bit of self-sustain built in with the passive, and her ultimate can be a really solid, just, like, ranged pull someone in and get a free kill because they don't have beads tool. And her poke isn't as bad as a lot of other assassins, because you can easily jump in, throw her 3, throw her 2, jump back out, and then, like, that's some decent poke where she's not putting herself at too much risk. So yeah, one of the better assassins, but still an assassin in Assault. She's not going to place that high. Bellona, probably drop in A. Has some self-sustain, but again, similar to what I was talking about with Arachne and Bakasura, it's kind of hard to get that self-sustain off a lot of the time, given that you need to be landing multiple basics on minions or gods with the Scourge to be able to heal, and you're often going to take a lot of poke by doing that. But still, a decent tank. The block stacks can be nice against some of the hunters in Assault. Has okay poke, but not great, mainly just like you're throwing out Scourge, I guess. And then the ultimate is really good, especially because you're going to be grouping up and fighting in that power aura for a long time, and also just a big AoE stun, pretty good. Kabrakan, S, for very similar reasons to a lot of these other tanks that I put up here, just really solid engage CC. That 1+2 combo can stun for so long that it could just absolutely kill someone. The walls are really good as well against a lot of the top gods that don't necessarily have movement like AMC and Apwash. Slightly lacking in that he has no CC immunity on the ultimate and no built-in sustain, but just a really strong Guardian. Camazotz, Probably A tier, I think. Definitely one of the better assassins. His 2 and 1 are both relatively long range and can be used to poke fairly easily. And he has really good sustain. Like, if a team fight happens and you get multiple pulls down, he can just absolutely full heal off of that. His 2 gives him decent sustain as well. And his ultimate is actually pretty solid in that it can clean up kills on people that are hiding under their tower. Like, oftentimes in Assault, you'll have people that make it back to tower on, like, 10 to 20% health or something. And before they can heal up, before they can heal up, Kamazots can dive in and use his ult for free because he takes no tower damage. And clean up those kills, and pretty good in team fights for that reason as well. Definitely one of the better assassins, but still not amazing. Cerberus S, ultimate basically does the same thing as Ares' ultimate, except it's a little bit worse because it can be knock-up immune and stuff like that. But yeah, ultimate pretty much does the same thing. He has a little bit of self-sustain built in with the 3, and also the healing reduction on his passive is pretty useful because it's constantly active and you're going to be reducing enemy healing pretty frequently with this and healing yourself a little bit as well. Kernanos S, one of the better hunters for sure. Built-in lifesteal with the spring form of his 1 is really nice to have. Decent poke with the Bramble Blast into like a few basics or whatever. Pretty good team fights as well. The ultimate, the polymorph, is really strong if that hits on targets with no beads. Chak S, decent but not amazing poke with the 1, and you can also 2 in if you're feeling yourself as well. Really good big AoE teamfight ultimate with the knock-up and silence, super strong, and built-in really good self-sustain with the 3 as well. There's nothing really wrong with Chak necessarily, but he doesn't do as much as some of the gods that are up in S+, but definitely on the upper end of the S placements, I would say. So I think I'm going to adjust a few things now that I've moved some gods around, and her definitely needs to come down. He's not as good as the gods up here. Maybe even... Nah, Artemis can probably stay because she does have a very strong teamfight ultimate. Maybe Bacchus and Cabrakan can come down slightly. I think these gods are a little bit better. Yeah, I think that looks a little better. Chang'e straight to S+, healer, obviously. Tier 2 healer, so not quite as strong as, like, Hel, Aphrodite, Umoja, and the enemy's going to be getting Sylvanas, Chang'e, Ra, Guan Yu, Terra, or Horus if you get Chang'e. But yeah, you know, can't complain about a healer. The 2 is really nice because it means she doesn't necessarily have to go beads against certain gods like Cerberus and Ares with Telegraph big CC ultimates, so she can just press her 2 for that. Obviously, the passive doesn't work in Assault, but that's not really, like, that big of a deal. If it worked, she would be up here, obviously. Like, she'd be probably the best Assault god in the game if it did work, and that's why it doesn't. But also, just in general, like, decent poking with the 1, because she can easily, like, kind of weave in with the 1 and 3 and then get out using her 2 or whatever, so, like, it's not too bad that she's got a bit short range on her pokes. And then her ultimate, really big teamfight stun that can potentially hit multiple people because everyone's always so grouped up, and Assault really strong as well. Charybdis, A, the ultimate is pretty good for teamfights, but somewhat unreliable. The 3 is very nice for the immunity on Telegraph CC immunities. You know, if Ares ults you, just press 3 and you get out for free. Her poking is okay with, like, the splinter shot and the 2 and stuff, but the 2 takes a while to charge up. She's a little bit janky. Decent, but not amazing. Chernobog probably in a similar boat. His ultimate is a little bit less useful in Assault, similar to what I mentioned with, like, Athena and Apollo and stuff. These global ultimates are just not as useful in Assault as they would be in Conquest. But decent poking, you know, the 2 into 1, if that root lands, you can follow it with basic attacks. Pretty safe with his 3 that can dash into walls and stuff like that. Solid hunter, but nothing amazing. Chiron will throw in S. Pretty solid poke with the 1 into 2, like, guaranteed hit. The ultimate, of course, as well, really good for snipes if, like, people are hiding under tower or whatever, or just pretty decent in team fights as well, and has a little bit of self and team healing with his passive. Obviously, it's one of the weakest heals in the game, but it's still a heal that can apply to your teammates and give a little bit of self-sustain and stuff like that, so pretty solid. Kronos, we'll drop him in A for now. Could potentially be S, but I don't think he's quite that strong. Poke is decent if you can land the 3. Obviously, the 1 is free, so like 3 into 1 does quite a lot of damage. Pretty solid with lifesteal as well, because he's got strong basic attacks that can benefit from that lifesteal better than abilities because of the 33% AoE ability lifesteal multiplier. His ultimate, like, while it can be kind of classed as self-sustain, it isn't really necessarily and can be a little bit unreliable. But yeah, pretty decent god, but nothing too crazy. Cleaner, sadly, I think I'm going to have to drop her in B. While she does have some okay poke with, like, her ultimates and her 2 and stuff, and she can kind of do, like, decent damage. She doesn't have any built-in self-sustain, but can obviously build Soul Eater and stuff like that. But, like, her wall passive is almost useless in Assault. I mean, you can hide in, like, the little wall between the side jungle, but every other wall in Assault, other than, like, maybe some near the base, are, like, unhideable because they're, like, outside of the map walls, and so you can't go into them. So her passive's a little bit useless there, and in general, like, her poke is decent, but not that great. She just doesn't really have, like, a lot going for her. Also, looking at this, maybe Bastet should move up to A. She's definitely better than these 2. Cthulhu, solid S tier support tank in Assault. Really good CC. The ultimate super powerful in team fights. Has okay poke with the 2, but not that amazing. And also, when he's ulting, can team heal, although it is at the cost of his own health. So, like, overall, it's like, I think it is a gain of health overall, especially if you're hitting multiple people with it. But obviously, he does sacrifice some of his health to do that. But still, being able to self-sustain your teammates up in a team fight is really good. Kukulkan will drop in A. Rage is a little bit hard to keep consistently up as much as you would in Conquest when you have your own lane of minions, because often Kukulkan's not going to be able to, like, get to the like farm the minions for rage as much as he would in Conquest. But still a decently solid tank, has healing reduction in his kit, which is really nice on the one, so super solid there, and obviously big AoE teamfight ultimate in his regular form, solid. Cupid, is he S or is he S+? That's the question. I guess I should probably drop him in S+. I think he's definitely almost as good as AMC, if not just as good. Obviously, has some built-in healing. He's a tier 3 healer, so the enemy will get like a decent-ish healer as well if you get Cupid. But Cupid, in my opinion, other than Baron Samedi, is one of the better tier 3 healers, because obviously Shiva is only going to heal with his ultimate, whereas Cupid can heal on a much lower cooldown, and Oleron is the other tier 3 healer, which I think is worse than Cupid. Solid poke with the Heart Bomb, big AoE teamfight ultimate that can be death for people without beads. Really solid god overall. Daji, we'll drop her in A, mainly for the reason of her ultimate. Obviously, she doesn't have really, like, any poke, no self-sustain to speak of, but that ultimate can be absolutely deadly against players without beads and can force beads if they do have it for, like, other gods like Ares or Baron Samedi or whatever. Danzaburo, I guess I'll throw him in S for now. I think he's, like, on the lower end of S. Actually, nah, he's probably not. Also, Artemis probably comes down as well. If we put both of these two down here, he has a little bit of self-sustain when he drinks his sake, when he throws the bottle there, but it's not that great of self-sustain, really. Could generate a little bit of extra gold, which is nice. Has okay poke, but not the best, really. Discordia, definitely S. Could even potentially be S+, but probably just S. Has really good poke with the 2-1 combo, especially if people are grouping up for meditation or around the healing orbs. She can land her 2 and get them all to madness towards each other and get the 1 for like huge damage. The Apple has really solid range. Once she gets her 3 ranked up, she can just 3 and they keep spamming out 2-1 for like really good poke. She has some of the best poke in the game, to be honest. In fact, thinking about it, she's definitely better than like Anubis and Baba. I might move her up here, but she is definitely one of the lower end of S+ for sure. Erlang Shen, we'll drop in A. Not great poke. His 2 is basically the only poke he has in his kit. The rest he really needs to be kind of like all-inning someone and getting on them for basic attacks and stuff like that. His ultimate is okay, you know, a big taunt is pretty nice, but not that insane. But obviously the self-sustain it gives is pretty good, so it's nice to have that as well. E-set, definitely S. Really insane poke, especially if you can land your spirit rolls reliably. You know, Spirit Ball and Wingus, both really good pokes. The 3 is super good in teamfights, and of course her ultimate, when everyone's grouping up for a big like AoE teamfight, her ultimate can be absolutely deadly to enemies and can heal your teammates like half the health if it fully charges. The only reason she's not S+ is that she can be a little bit unreliable. Like the ultimate won't always be getting a full charge in a teamfight, and sometimes enemies can walk out of it. Spirit Ball can be hard to land at very far ranges and stuff like that, so she's a little unreliable, but overall a really solid mage for Assault. Also, the passive gives extra regen as well, which is super valuable in Assault. It's very tempting to put her up to S+, to be honest, but I think I'll leave her here for now. Fafnir probably goes up to S+, to be honest. Doesn't have the big AoE teamfight CC that a lot of the ones up here do have, but obviously his dragon form is super strong. He can chain stun people. His 2 is really good as well, just being able to give your hunter extra attack speed. Has a little bit of self-sustain built in there as well. And obviously dragon form coerce can absolutely shred teamfights, shred towers, titans, anything you want really. And his 1 can lead into some solid poke from his team. You know, it's a long range stun that's pretty reliably easy to hit, and your teammates can follow up on that. Fenrir, similar to Bastet, I'll probably drop him in A purely because his ultimate is very good at like picking off enemies without beads. That's pretty much the only reason you really want Fenrir. But Freya will drop in A bit slow to come online, but once she has a bit of lifesteal and stuff like that, she can sustain up relatively well, and has pretty solid poke with the pulse range basic attacks as well. Ultimate is actually very underrated, does so much damage, makes her very safe, can lifesteal a lot if she has lifesteal as well. Hits enemies under towers in a similar way to Karazotsul, but not quite as good. Ganesha will drop in S, one of the better tanks for sure. His ultimate, very good for zoning, being able to silence people, you know, just has really solid CC, a really good fundamental support kit. Geb, for very similar reasons, goes up here as well. You could even potentially argue Geb's S+. Maybe he is, actually. Obviously, big AoE teamfight engage CC with the Blink ult and stuff like that. I mean, you're pretty much always going to go Blink on Geb, but even then you could just like walk in or roll out in and use the ult as well. Chains into the knock-up. The shield is really nice to keep your teammates alive so that they can be like healed up and stuff like that. You know, if you keep a teammate alive that would have often died, and then you're going to heal up to like 50% health or something like that with meditations and pods or your healer or whatever, that's really good. You know, Geb just one of the solid, better tanks in the game mode for sure. Gilgamesh, we'll drop him in A. Very weak poke, kind of like an all-in character, but when he does go all in those team fights, he can be really solid. You know, does great damage, has solid CC if you can keep someone trapped in the winds. Like, if you get someone trapped in the winds and they keep just bouncing off of it and then you drop kick them off of it and stuff, that's such a dead person in Assault. Like, your teammate's going to collapse on him, he's going to die. But can be a little bit unreliable, lacks poke, has some self-sustain with the HP 5 on his 1, but it's not that reliable when you can't keep his 1 up as often as you will be able to in, like, Conquest, for example. Guan Yu, straight to S+. One of the stronger healers in the game. Despite only being tier 2, he's got really strong healing for his teammates, especially if he can keep his passive charged up. Big AoE teamfight stun is also really useful. Lacks poke, obviously, but other than that, that's pretty much the only thing Guan Yu lacks. Other than that, he's like a really solid god. Hachiman will drop in A. He's a decent hunter. Has some decent poke with the extra range autos and the The 2 banner is pretty reliable to hit from range as well. You know, even the ultimate, it can like pick off kills from a pretty solid range, makes him relatively safe as well, but there's nothing like super special about Hachiman that makes me place him any higher than A tier. Hades, I'll probably drop in S, just generally a pretty strong god. Technically can heal his team, but it's very hard to actually get that to reliably work because similar to a lot of the self-sustain from gods like Arachne and Bakasura, Hades needs to be basically point-blank range to the minion wave to actually be able to use that heal, and also his teammates need to be pretty much point-blank range to the minion wave as well, so it puts people in a lot of danger just to get a little bit of self-sustain off his 3, so it's actually not as reliable for a team heal as you would think, but pretty decent self-sustain. Uses lifesteal pretty well as well, you know, with Bancroft's Claw and stuff like that. And the ultimate, if the enemy doesn't have beads, or if you burn their jump, or if they're one of these top gods like Apwash and AMC that don't have a jump, very solid for that as well. Hebo, solid A tier, okay poke with the 3, you know, 3 into 1, although the 1 is a little bit close range, puts you in a little bit of danger, but 3 into 1's very good, and you can all in with the ult as well. The 2's pretty nice when your team are so grouped up, you know, you can get good usage out of that, but in general, he's not like anything super special. Haim, he's fine, his ult's very good, but like his 3 is a little bit lackluster in Assault, not as easy to use as it is in Conquest in terms of the amount of value you can get out of it. His 1 is okay poke, his 2 is as well, but really you don't want to be using the 2 at like long range to poke. You want to be using that for like the knock up in team fights, especially if you can air cancel it and stuff like that. Decent hunter, but again, nothing super special about him really. Hell, straight to S+, obviously. One of the other tier 1 healers alongside Aphrodite and Umoja. One of the better healers as well. Definitely better than Aphrodite in terms of healing because you can group up and like heal the whole team and then also heal a single target and herself. Similar to Aphrodite actually. In terms of her 1+3, Hell can just press Light Stance 1 on a target, heal herself and the ally. But then she also has the Inspire AoE team heal that can heal the whole team. Definitely one of the better healers, if not the best healer in Assault. Decent poke as well, you know, throwing out the 1. Repulse is a little bit, you have to get kind of in close range to do that, but it can kind of be used to poke. It has decent range. Hell's only real issue is getting dived on, to be honest, and also potentially running out of mana. But other than that, really solid Assault god. Definitely one of the best in the game. Hera, we'll probably drop in S. Big AoE teamfight knockup is super useful and really solid poke with the 2 into 1 combo. Pretty safe as well with the shield, you know, decently safe. Lacks self-sustain, but the shield can kind of make up for that. But yeah, just a really solid mage. Hercules, he's either S or S+. Is he S+? Maybe he is, dude. He's really solid. Like, obviously that 2 into 1 combo, it can be an absolute beads burner or just kills people outright. Okay self-sustain, but not amazing. His 3, if you're just pressing it on cooldown for self-sustain, really isn't that great, but it's very good if you're using it in teamfights, of course, and it is some self-sustain regardless, so that's useful. Ultimate is huge burst damage as well in teamfights. Really solid. Could honestly probably drop down to S, I think, but I'm going to leave him in S+, because he's my boy. Horus, S+, one of the tier 2 healers. Definitely worse than some of the other tier 2 healers like Ra, Sylvanas, Guan Yu, but still has decent team healing and really good engage with the 1+2. Does a lot of damage. The only kind of issue with Horus that would make me drag him down, but I think he still belongs in S+ regardless, is his ultimate. It's kind of a little bit hard to use in Assault since it's very telegraphed and you can't do, like, you know, ganks out of the jungle or whatever like you can do in Conquest. But other than that, Horus is a very solid god and obviously a tier 2 healer. Oyi, a decent hunter, has okay teamfight presence with the Sunbreaker. Not really any amazing ricochet spots in Assault, I wouldn't say, and he has okay poke with, like, the ricochet into maybe a couple of basic attacks from the stun and stuff like that. Decent, but not amazing. Hunbats will drop in A for a lot of similar reasons to, like, Daji and Fenrir also being in A, and that his ultimate is really useful, but his base kit really isn't that good and he kind of lacks poke and self-sustain. But yeah, that big AoE Fear No Evil ultimate can be really useful in teamfights when people don't have beads, so that's the reason he's up here. Ishtar, solid S, obviously has some of the best range poke in the game with those insanely long range basic attacks from the 6 seconds of her 1. The 2 is okay for poke as well, the ultimate's really good, just in general a really solid god that has a lot of what you want from a hunter, can build a little bit of self-sustain even though she doesn't have it built into the kit, she can build lifesteal and make good use of that. Definitely one of the better hunters, but not worthy of being up in S+, I won't say. Izanami, A, the basic attacks don't really mean as much in Assault because you don't need the lane pressure because people just clear waves in general. Like, she's not as good as she might be in, like, the Conquest Duo lane with that really good lane pressure. Her 2 is okay poke, albeit a bit slow and sometimes kind of hard to hit, and her ultimate, again, kind of hard to hit, but can be really powerful if landed. Giannis will drop in A. His poke is okay with, like, portal into 2, but if he does use the portal to confirm his 2, he puts himself at a little bit of risk of dying. But his portals in general and his ultimate are just very weak in Assault because, similar to with Cleo, why she's down here, they're just not that useful because a lot of the walls in Assault are like walls that lead out of the map and you physically can't put portals on them. He does have some uses with portals, there are some walls you can go through, but generally just like not that great, and you don't need to globally move your team across the map using his ultimate in the same way that you would need to in Conquest. Jingwei, decent hunter, has decent poke with the 1, can crit with the 2 basic attacks, immunities and knockups, or not immunity, but kind of immunities and knockups is also pretty useful. But nothing like super special about Jingwei. Her passive isn't as useful in a game mode where you have to die to use it. Jormungandr, definitely S. Really solid tank overall. His ultimate causes so much disruption in team fights and is really useful. His poke is like not great, but to be fair, you don't necessarily need great poke from your tanks. You mainly need poke on your damage dealers. And no built-in self-sustain as well, but just a really solid overall like team fighting tank and frontliner. Kali might be my first C tier, to be honest. The only reason she's not D is that like once she gets late game, she kind of can just like roll over teams in the same way Kali always does. But yeah, no real built-in self-sustain. Obviously, the ultimate technically heals you, but only if you're like below a certain amount, and the 2 gives you lifesteal, but it's very hard to use. It's only a small amount of lifesteal and not worth going in to like try and get the healing from that. You'll just take more poke than it's worth. And of course, her passive can be a huge heal, but that's somewhat unreliable to get, especially in the early game when you can't just shred down targets like that. And her poke, while her 2 is okay for poke, it's a little bit unreliable. You kind of want to go all in and use it in like melee range to make sure you confirm all 3 blades. Just overall not that strong, and mainly only in C tier and not D tier because of her strong late game presence. Khepri, in a similar way to Gabe, just really useful that you can revive a teammate, you know, especially if he's on a team with a healer. It's insane when he's on a team with a healer because you can just always, like, if the enemy like diving your hell trying to get her killed and stuff, you just res her. It's like really good there. No big AoE teamfight CC ultimate because of that, because obviously he's got the res. But you know, the 2 is solid. His base kit is just in general really good. Technically, it has like a little bit of team sustain in the form of his shield because you're going to be grouped up a lot in Assault and his shield's going to get a lot of value. And if you're shielding off enemies like poke damage and stuff, that's kind of similar to healing it up after you take poke. Arthur, probably in B, honestly. His poke is basically limited to his 1A and that's kind of it. Everything else is like pretty close range and you kind of have to go in for it. Really struggles building energy. Like often a lot of times you build your energy in Conquest and other game modes by just like killing minions and stuff like that. And he kind of struggles to hit gods reliably enough to build energy to use his 85 energy ultimate. You can get the range stun relatively quickly, but to be able to use the proper big boy 85 energy ultimate is kind of like difficult to do that. And no built-in self-sustain either. Like, yeah, he's a tank, but his CC as a tank isn't that great. He's mainly like an aggressive, like bruiser kind of damage-heavy tank. And he struggles to build energy, as I said. It's kind of difficult to make him work. Kukulkan, definitely S, one of the better mages for sure. Insane wave clear if that ever matters, obviously. And the poke is just really solid with a 1 into 3. If you get poly as well, you can 1 poly into 3. That's so much damage. Big AoE teamfight ultimate that does a ton of damage as well. Other than not having self-sustain, he's pretty much a perfect mage for Assault. Kumbhakana, is he S or is he S+? That's the question. He might be S+, dude. His CC is just so annoying in Assault. You can easily hit multiple people with it. His ultimate pretty much guarantees a kill if you have like a solid mage like the Kukulkan that can follow up with it. Can even kind of poke with his 1, although it doesn't do that much damage really. Mainly his big like teamfight CCs is what you're picking this guy for. Or not picking him, or not re-rolling him or whatever. Kuzumbo, we'll drop him in S. His mechanic of being able to like push through the wave can be good, but is less good in Assault than it is in like a Conquest solo or support or whatever. But his ultimate, big AoE solid teamfight CC, he has okay poke with the Nene Kappas. They can be really annoying, and his 2 is pretty good for like shredding hunters and stuff like that late game. Just a pretty solid tank overall. Lancelot, probably B. Has a lot of good all-in potential, but not much self-sustain in the kit. I say not much because the shield is like kind of self-sustain in a way, although it's not really. Very much has to go all-in, very close range melee. His only range poke is mounting up and then throwing the 1, which is really not that passable. Honestly, maybe could even move down to C thinking about it, and potentially the same thing with Cleo. I think we'll do this. Low-key, probably C tier as well. Can get in with Vanish, which allows him a little bit more potential than some of these gods, but probably not even enough to warrant moving him up 1 tier. Obviously, old Loki, where you could steal the whole wave by decoying behind the enemy tower and getting like 400 gold and like 3 levels per wave because your teammates weren't in range of it, and assault minion waves are worth like 6 times what they are in regular game modes. That was pretty funny, and you'd probably be A tier just because you could do that, get like a 6 level and 2 item lead and one-shot everyone, but new Loki can't really do that, and is just weak poke, no built-in self-sustain, hard to get in team fights, general assassin problems. Maui, is he S or is he S+? I think due to the unreliability of his ultimate a little bit, it's not quite as strong as some of the ones up here, like Ares and Cerberus, that are pretty much guaranteed to hit unless they beads. But yeah, Maui, really strong CC. The single target pull can be very deadly. The ultimate, obviously, really strong. And more likely to get value when his in teamfights when his whole team are grouped up around his 2 as well. Just a really solid god, but probably not quite warranting of S+. Medusa, pretty solid hunter. I don't think she warrants being an S, to be honest, but definitely one of the upper end of A tier hunters for sure. Has really good poke with the 2. Obviously, you throw the 2 at the wave and it splashes to like all the enemies. Really good for poking that way. Mercury, I'll throw him in B. He has some of the better poke of a lot of the assassins, especially with his 1. If you have crit or whatever, it can be decent for poke, and he's very good at getting into the fight because of his ultimate, although it can be a little bit telegraphed in Assault. It's kind of hard to, like, mask the fact that you're going to ult in. But I'd say he's definitely better than a lot of the assassins I have down in C and D tier, so we'll leave him in B for now. Merlin, easy S+. Some of the strongest poke in the game, can just vomit abilities, change stance, vomit more abilities, really insane poke. No built-in self-sustain, but other than that, like, Merlin is definitely, he's close to being in the broken tier, to be honest. His poke is just absolutely ridiculous, and that's what you need in Assault. Morgan Le Fay, probably A. She's probably upper end of A as well, I would say. Her poke is okay with the 1, but like the 2 isn't really poke, because if you're trying to use the 2's like long range hitbox, you kind of need to hit the first hit to be able to like actually land that reliably. If you just throw it out trying to get like the dragon swoop to actually hit someone, no one's really going to get hit by that in a realistic world. So like it's not really poke in that way, but the 1 is good. If you want to like go like really close in, you can get that combo for poke, but then you're putting yourself at risk at that point. But obviously, her 3, really good range for poke as well. Her ultimate, super good for cleaning up kills and just general, like, keeping herself safe. Also has healing as well. Mulan, we'll drop her in A. Has a bit of self-sustain once you get the 2 ranked up, which is pretty solid. Her poke is, like, not great. Obviously, she has to kind of go in to be able to do the poke, like 3 in and then 2 and 1 and stuff like that, and she puts herself at a little bit of risk for that. But obviously, if you're tanky, it's a little bit easier to do that than if you're not tanky, like a Morgan Le Fay trying to run in and get her 2 in melee range. Ultimate is solid, you know, big AoE teamfight CC with the knockup, very solid. Generally has like more damage than other warriors, just decent. Naja, I think I'll throw in S. Can be built tanky, which is the reason why he's like one of the higher placed assassins. You can just build him like Bruiser and definitely get away with it. His ultimate can be absolutely deadly, similar to Kumbol, in that like you can get a big follow-up from one of your mages, which you probably have, and just do huge damage. The 2 is like decent self-sustain actually. It's not great, but it's pretty solid. And then the 1 is really good poke as well. You know, you just throw it at the minion wave, it's going to bounce between gods, or you can even throw it at a god if they're like trying to group up for meditation or around a healing pod and just get really good damage from that. Neith, solid hunter, has a little bit of self-sustain with the 2, but can be a little bit unreliable to get it off. The 1 is decent poke, especially when you can follow it up with a couple of basic attacks. She's decently safe, but not amazingly so. Her ultimate is solid, but a little bit telegraphed and puts her out of the fight for a little bit. Just a decent hunter, but nothing special. Nemesis will drop in B purely for the fact that her ultimate can be really useful to shred some of the frontline tanks that you see in this game mode. But other than that, she has no poke to speak of. Her self-sustain on the shield is extremely unreliable and not really, I wouldn't even consider it self-sustain to be honest. Just overall not that great. Suffers from a lot of the problems of all the assassins that are down here to be honest. Nike, probably S, I would say. Really good poke with Rend. You know, you can just kind of like float around hitting people with that repeatedly, doing a lot of damage. Decent in team fights as well, has a nice knock-up, the push is nice, very safe with the ultimate shield, which is kind of like self-sustain in a way, especially if you're team fighting. And gives her teammates a bit of stats as well, just a pretty solid god overall. Nox, S or S+, that's the question. Probably S+, just in a similar way to a lot of these beads burners that are up here. Most of the beads burners up here are actually tanks, but Nox I would say classes as a beads burner because if you get hit by her 2-1 combo without beads, you kind of just die. And while it is single target in comparison to some things like Cerberus ult and Ares ult, you can't really expect a mage to have like a big AoE teamfight CC burning ultimate. That's usually not what happens. But yeah, Nox's 2-1 combo, if you don't have beads, you're kind of dead. A lot of people don't have beads in Assault until level 12, just really solid overall. Nuwa, another S+. A lot of these mages are very strong for similar reasons. Nuwa has poke that is unmissable in her ultimate. Like, you just keep spamming your ultimate, it's going to keep doing damage. Significantly stronger against teams without a healer when they can't just heal off that damage really easily. Her 2 into 3 combo is like decent for poke as well, albeit a little bit close range sometimes. But yeah, mainly liking Nuwa for that ultimate. Just press 4 on cooldown, do a bunch of damage, free. Odin, S. Poke is kind of okay with the 3, but like it's really not that great for using it as poke. But the main reason you're picking Odin is for that big boy cage. Counters a lot of the top picks, like a lot of the healers, obviously with the 100% anti-heal, that's really solid, and a lot of the top healers in Assault, like Guan, Hell, Afro, all can't escape the cage with a jump, so very super strong there. Enemy's going to be forced to go Phantom Shell, which means they're foregoing a meditation, or like some other useful relic, which is just really nice as well. Super good against AMC and Apwash, and another one of the guys we're going to put in Broken Tier, which we'll find out in a bit. You know, Odin is really like a counter to a lot of the top picks, and that's the main reason he's strong. Cupid is another one that he does really well against. Changa as well can't escape the cage. Geb, like a lot of these top picks really kind of like hard counter by Odin, and that's the main reason you would want him on a team. Olorun, so a tier 3 healer. I think I'm probably going to put him in S though, because his healing really isn't that good. In comparison to a lot of the other tier 3 healers, like he's nowhere near as good as Cupid or Baron Sambi. He's probably about on level with Shiva, because his is on a lower cooldown, even though Shiva heals more. Does have solid poke with the 1, especially when it can crit and stuff like that, and his ultimate is pretty good for team fights. Maybe I move him up, actually. He is one of the worst healers in the game, but he does have other aspects that make him strong in Assault, like good poke and a good teamfight ultimate, so he probably does deserve to be up here because he's kind of multifaceted. Osiris will drop in S, probably on the lower end of S, could probably even be A, but he does have some strong things about him in Assault. Really good poke with the 1 into 2, you know, you can just keep throwing that out on cooldown. They're both very low cooldown abilities, especially the Sickle, and you can just keep throwing those out and poking people out. And the ultimate is 100% anti-heal as well, so it can be really good for shutting down enemy healers. So like if you see that you have a healer on your team, you're going to know the enemy team's also going to have a healer because you can't re-roll them and they get given one for free. And so if you see a Hel or an Aphrodite or even like a Guan Yu on your team, make sure you don't re-roll the Osiris. It's going to be pretty good for you because you have that 100% anti-heal to shut down their healer. Pele, B I guess. She has okay poke with the 1, but really not that great. Some kind of built-in self-sustain, but it's combat self-sustain, so it's not that good. Yeah, suffers from a lot of the same problems as the assassins down here. I'm not going to repeat myself too much. Persephone, solid mage. I think we probably go with S. I think pre-rework Persephone might have even been S+. Really good poke. She can just constantly throw out the plants. Her 1 has good range. Not as good range as it used to have, but still really good range. The ultimate, obviously infinite range, you can just throw it from as far away as you want and cause chaos in team fights. Maybe now that I've just listed all that stuff, she should probably be up here, actually. Definitely one of the better mages in Assault for sure. Poseidon, S or A? Probably A. He's a little bit all in on his ultimate, and while that is really good, he has an insane level 5 fight. He can often win the level 5 fight on his own for his team, which is really strong. He does lack poke, especially in comparison to a lot of other mages. Because really all he has for poke is like throwing down the 3 and 1 and hoping the 1 hits. And oftentimes the 1 isn't going to hit if you're doing it from far away range. So kind of has to get in there to really land this poke, you know, be close range for the 1 and the 2's basic attacks and stuff like that. So just generally, like, he's kind of an all-in mage, and he can definitely work, but with no built-in self-sustain and not great poke, he's a little bit weaker than some of the other mages. Raijin does have very good poke, though. The 2 into 1, decently long range, does a ton of damage, can jump to other people with the Raiju. The ultimate, really strong as well for, like, team fight, securing kills. Has a little bit of CC on it if you want to as well, which is super good. Just a generally, like, pretty solid mage. The only thing he really lacks is self-sustain. Ra, obviously, straight up to S+. Somehow this guy's a tier 2 healer. I feel like he should probably be a tier 3 healer. He's just as strong as like Aphrodite and Yamoja in my opinion, but probably not quite as strong as Hel, because obviously he can heal his full team and it's a pretty strong heal as well. Obviously it's a tick heal, but you don't really mind that too much in Assault because you don't need to combat heal all the time necessarily. Like you can just back up to your tower and like all heal up with the Ra 3. And generally pretty good poke. The 1 can be somewhat unreliable to hit from like very far range, but still pretty good. And then obviously the ult, very good for securing kills in team fights and super good at comboing off a lot of the top tanks, big CCs. Rama, we'll throw him in S. Decent poke in that you can slow people with the 1's basic attacks and like get a lot of follow-up basic attacks in that regard. And obviously the ultimate as well, super good for securing kills. And just does generally good hunter things. You could move him down to A, to be honest. I think he's probably a lower end of S. But I think he's definitely better than some of the hunters that I placed down here, like Charybdis and Apollo. Rat, one of the more decent assassins, I would say, because he can kind of be built a little bit bruiser if you want to. You know, you can have Evergreen Acorn for really good sustain, which is super nice. The ultimate's pretty good as a big teamfight CC and stuff as well. Can buy his Acorns from out of base on, like, Changa's passive that's completely disabled. Rat's passive is still enabled, so you can just, like, come out of base with, like, a full item at level 5, and then, without even having to die, you can have 2 full items, because you buy, like, Evergreen Acorn or whatever kind of Acorn you want. Probably Evergreen in Assault, most likely. Yeah, definitely one of the better assassins, but I don't think he warrants being up in S, though he is pretty close, honestly. Definitely one of the better assassins. Raven, I think I'll drop here as well. You can build in Bruiser and absolutely get away with it. You know, he's a pretty popular soul laner in Conquest for that reason. Bruiser, Raven definitely works. His 2 is super good at immuning some of the more telegraphed tank CCs, like if an Athena dashes in, you just 2 to avoid the taunt. If Ares ults you, you just 2 to avoid the pull. And the same goes for a lot of the big mage ultimates. You know, if you see a Kukulkan ulting and you don't think you're going to be able to like dodge out of it, you just press 2 and you're fine. Has a little bit of self-sustain with the 3, you know, you can just throw out the minions from range, heal up a little bit, and he also has the shields on his passive as well, although they are a little bit unreliable. In Assault, it's kind of hard to, like, really get in and land a lot of basics and 1s on people. His poke is okay, especially because you can kind of just, like, run in 3 from range, run in a little bit, 1 them, and then 2 if you need to get out, and it's just, like, a decent poke cycle that you can do there. And the ultimate makes him a little bit more tanky in team fights, pretty solid in general. Scylla, S or S+. That's the question. I don't think she has anything like super unique that makes her amazing that she warrants S+, but she's definitely on the upper end of S for sure. Really insane poke, especially once you get your abilities max. Like if people are grouping up for meditation and you hit them with your 1 and root 3 of them into your 2, that's so much damage. It's absolutely insane. And obviously the ultimate super strong as well, really good at comboing off a lot of the big tank CCs, but I wouldn't say she has anything that makes her stand out as like an S+ god. Like a lot of the mages up here, like Merlin and Persephone, insane poke. Nox, insane lockdown. Nuwa can just press 4 on cooldown. You know, a lot of the healers, obvious reasons why they're up here. Scylla doesn't really have anything that's like that insane that warrants her being up there, I wouldn't say, but she's definitely one of the better mages. Serket, I think we'll drop in A. Definitely an okay assassin. You can kind of build her tanky. She's definitely been successful tanky in the past. Has okay CC with like the 2 and stuff, and the 1 obviously has 100% anti-heal, so in a similar case to what I was talking about with like Odin and Osiris, if you see you have a healer on your team, maybe don't re-roll Serket, because she's actually not that bad if the enemy team's going to guarantee to have a healer. She's very good at focusing them down. Set, awful, probably D tier to be honest. It's really hard to actually make him work in Assault. Yes, he has some kind of self-sustain on the ultimate, but it's super hard to actually, like, reliably get in with that ultimate and, like, get a lot of basic attacks off in the same way you can in Conquest, because everyone's, like, so grouped up and stuff like that, and his poke is okay, like, you can summon a spawn and throw the 1 and stuff, but I really just don't think Set is, like, super successful. You can maybe move him up to C if you wanted to, but I'm gonna leave him in D. Shiva, we'll drop him in S, or is he S+? Nah, I think he's probably S, to be honest. He's probably one of the only healers that's not going to be an S+, and it's because he's not really even a healer. I kind of get why they classed him as a tier 3 healer, because if he wasn't classed as a healer at all, he'd just be really strong. But it's an ultimate, you know, it's a very long cooldown, and you do heal a decent amount with it, but, you know, it's not like constant sustain that you're going to get from a lot of these healers. Overall, still a really solid god though, you know, his 1-2 CC chain can be absolutely deadly, his 3 is solid as well, just in general a really good god, but lacks a bit of poke, and his self-sustain isn't that good because it's on such a long cooldown, same thing with his team heal. Skadi, probably S, I would say. You could maybe say she's A as well, but she has decent poke by just like putting Calder on people and warning them. Her lack of safety in terms of having no movement is a little bit mitigated in Assault because you don't need the movement quite as much because you're often like stationary, just like in a standoff, like poking and stuff like that, which she's pretty decent at. Sobek, S+, has a little bit of self-sustain with the 3, which is kind of nice. Anti-heal on the 3 is also really good. The pluck is just super solid, can regen mana with his ultimate. Sobek doesn't do any one thing insanely well, but he does a lot of things you want in Assault really well. So, like, just pretty solid overall. Definitely an S+ tank. Sol, probably S. Pretty good poke, like, you just throw out the 2 on cooldown, really good. Has self-sustain in the 1. It is missing health sustain, so it's not quite as good. But it's still pretty overall solid. Has strong basic attacks for taking down towers with the magical damage bonus to towers as well. And a pretty decent solid teamfight ultimate. The 3 can also immune some CCs as well. Just in general, a pretty solid mage overall. Sun Wukong, probably S as well. Really good poke with the 1. Can do decently all in as well with, like, the Tiger Stone into 2 into 1 and stuff like that. The ultimate gives him some sustain, and also allows him to dive towers pretty effectively as well. Wukong, bit of a jack of all trades, does a lot of things you want in Assault, similar to Sobek, but definitely not as good as Sobek. Susanoo, I'll probably drop in B. He can, like, relatively easily get in on people, drop his kit, and then dash out at the end of his 1, which is why he's not, like, lower. But yeah, no self-sustain, very vulnerable, not great poke unless you want to like kind of go all in. A decent teamfight ultimate, I suppose, but not that great. Sylvanas, easy S+, definitely one of the better tier 2 healers. His heals are really strong. You don't have to like wait around like you would for Ra heals, for example. You just press 2 when your teammates are around and then they can go and they're free to do whatever they want because the heal's just going to tick on them. And he's just got really solid tank capabilities as well. You know, the root into pull or pull into root if you're a Chad. The ultimate as well, super good for the knock-up in teamfights. Sylvanas definitely one of the best Assault gods there is. Terra, one of the weaker tier 2 healers, but still really insane. Very similar to Sylvanas in that she still has really good tanking capabilities as well. The ultimate's super good because in Assault you're going to be hitting like easily 7 or 8 people with it in a big team fight, and that's when it gets like super insane value. When you can hit like more than 4 or 5 people with Terra ultimate, it just becomes absolutely insane. The big 3-1 into AoE root engage is also just super strong, and of course the healing. It's not the best healing as I mentioned because you have to sit around for a long time. It's over 10 seconds, but as I mentioned with Ra, you can kind of get away with that. You can sit on the tower for 10 seconds healing up in Assault. You kind of have a bit of time to do that. Thanatos, I'll probably drop in A because he has okay poke if you can reliably hit Death Sight, and also has self-sustain in that regard as well, and his ultimate can be somewhat useful as an execute. Morrigan, oh, is Morrigan S or S+? Because because she really does depend on what gods are in the game. Like, if you can Morrigan into, like, one of their big tanks and get, like, a huge engage, or, like, even maybe into a healer, potentially. You know, Morrigan into Zeus or whatever. I haven't placed Zeus yet, but I think we all know where Zeus is going to be on this tier list. I think I'll drop her in S+, because she does have some really good transforms, but obviously is somewhat reliant on what's actually in the game. Thor, one of the better assassins. Does he go in S? That's the question. I think because he's so strong right now as a god, I'll drop him in S, but I think before the buff that he got, maybe he would have been A tier. Like, he's very on the verge of these 2 tiers, I think. But I think he's definitely better than Thana. His poke is really good for an assassin. The 2 into 1 does so much damage. It's like mage level poke on an assassin. And then if he wants to, he can teleport and go all in. His ultimate is a little bit telegraphed, like a lot of those ultimates, like Mercury and Ratatoska and stuff. It's kind of hard to like land this with a surprise on the enemy, but you can still just ult at the start of a team fight, and they have to be very wary of you landing on them. Definitely one of the better assassins in the game. Can also rebuild Bruiser very successfully, which is probably what I would recommend, actually, building kind of Bruiser and Assault instead of full damage. Fourth, S+, arguably is close to being in the broken category. His poke is some of the best in the entire game. Obviously, his 1 has practically 0 cooldown. If you build full cooldown reduction and hit all 3 shots of it, it starts on like a 4-second cooldown or something absolutely absurd. Has some of the best range in the game when shooting it through the glyph. That's kind of all he does. He's just an absolute line poke machine, but he is probably the best in the game at doing that, even better than like Merlin and Persephone and stuff, so definitely one of the strongest assault mages. Tiamat, probably drop in S. I don't think she quite belongs in S+, but she has some strong capabilities as well. A little bit tanky, which is pretty nice. Can summon extra minions, which is pretty good for pushing as well. Has decent poke with the 1 in flying stance as well. Even the 2 in flying stance is relatively reliable as a poke. Just a pretty solid mage overall, but nothing like super insane. Tsukuyomi, A, I think. He's one of the better assassins purely because he's kind of like got that design of a ranged assassin, and that his 1 and into like the ranged basics is like just generally pretty good for poking. His ultimate, it can be a little unreliable because you dive in with it. Like, he doesn't have much defensive mobility in terms of getting out, and you really got to like full commit if you're going to use that ult to go in, but he does have pretty solid poke and lacks self-sustain, but overall one of the better assassins. Tier, probably S+, to be honest. Similar to Hercules, if you hit like a Fearless, people are just absolutely dead, but it is a little harder to hit Fearless than it is to hit Earthbreaker because you have to be behind the enemy, so you might have to like use a Blink, which is on a long cooldown, or your ultimate, which is on a long cooldown as well. So it's not quite as easy to farm people as it is with Hercules. And Tier's sustain is conditional on the fact that you need to have like some minions around for you to sustain off of, and sometimes your team just one-shot the minion wave and you can't do much about that. So definitely worse than Herc, but I think he probably does still warrant being an S+. I think he's better than a lot of the gods that are down in S. Ula, really insane, probably S+, to be honest. Some of the strongest poke in the game. You land an axe, you just blow up half of someone's health, or potentially more if you're fed. No built-in self-sustain, not much else to speak of other than the really insane poke, but he's one of the best in class at doing that. Definitely S+. The mana, probably A. His ult is actually not bad for just like sustaining you up, I suppose, but he's really kind of an all-in god. He can poke with the 3, but other than that, he really wants to just go in and go ham beating on people, which isn't that great in Assault because he can't always do that. Vulcan, S or S+. I think since his ultimate is quite telegraphed and it's not like Conquest where you can get it over walls and surprise people and stuff, I will drop him down to S, but he could probably be S+, to be honest. His poke is really strong. You know, that 3 into 1 meatball combo just does so much damage. His turret is very good for poke as well. Xbalanque, I'll drop him in A. He's a hunter. He does solid, but he doesn't really have anything that special, to be honest. The bowlers are okay for poke. Jing Chen, S+ for sure. Really insane tank. Has super solid sustain with the HP 5 from his passive. That's actually really underrated in terms of keeping him healthy. You know, you have that from your passive plus sovereignty, and you're pretty much at capped HP 5 like the whole time. And you have like really good sustain because of that. Even though he doesn't have any like healing in his kit, that HP 5 is actually really strong and underrated. The 1's basic attack damage reduction is really solid against a lot of the top hunters in the game mode, and obviously the ultimate, similar to Ares and Cerberus, big fat beads burner that if you can't jump away or bees it, you're gonna die to it basically. Yamoja, S+, one of the stronger healers, obviously a tier 1 healer, not quite as strong as Hell, but better than Afro in terms of tier 1 healers in my opinion, and has a lot of those solid tank capabilities like the ultimate's walls that can be really strong, some stuns. Just in general, Yamoja's a really strong god, and she's also a really strong healer, so definitely one of the best assault gods. Yumiya, S+ or S? A lot of these tanks, I'm like struggling whether to place them S or S+. I think with Ymir, I will put him in S simply because his poke is really terrible. He kind of has to like get in really close to land that like freeze into 2. And he can kind of like suffer a little bit in terms of he takes a lot of poke just by trying to land his freeze a lot of the time. And his ultimate, in a similar case, he's going to take a lot of poke by trying to like land that and stuff. But the walls are really good. Not quite as good as they would be in Conquest in my opinion, which is why I think I'm dropping him to S instead of S+, but still a pretty solid tank. Yu Huang, S or S+, again. It's a question of whether this guy, like, I don't think he has anything that's super... Maybe he does, though. His poke is really strong. It's not as good as, like, Thoth, Persephone level and Merlin, but it is really strong. Like, the 2-into-1 guaranteed is just super strong. He's pretty safe with the 3, and then that ultimate that can push someone out of position can be, like, an absolute free kill in Assault if you're really good with it. So I think Yuhang probably deserves to be up here. And finally, we've made it to the boy. Probably the only other broken god, I would say. Similar to Apwash, but minus the self-sustain, but plus the poke. Zeus's poke, best in the entire game. It's really hard to deal with a Zeus because he can really easily be protected in Assault because he's always around his teammates and he'll have his Guardian like right next to him, assuming you have a Guardian, obviously. And he can just like camp on the tower, just throw his 2 into 1 to 3, and you just take half your health out of nowhere. And he just keeps doing that on repeat, and it's really hard to shut him down. Definitely one of the best Assault gods in the game. Big AoE teamfight ultimate is nice as well. And finally, Zhonga Donga. I'll probably drop him in A. It's a little bit hard to keep his passive stacked up when the minion wave is being cleared so often in Assault. But yeah, that's the full Assault tier list. We're going to have to zoom out to get it all on the damn screen. That should do, right? Yeah, there you go. So, in my opinion, only 2 absolutely broken Assault gods, Apwash and Zeus. Maybe you could say some of like the healers should be up there, but because they're healers and you don't get them that often, I don't know, I don't feel like they deserve to be up in Broken. If I was going to put any healers up in Broken, it would be Yamoja and Hell, I think. But I think I'm going to leave them down here. This looks like a pretty good list, in my opinion. Obviously, basically the entire of the bottom 3 tiers is Assassins, other than King Arthur, which I think has some specific unique issues that make him a little bit weak. And a lot of the top gods are either tanks or mages with tons of range poke or healers. That's basically what you want in Assault. You want mages with range poke, healers, and tanks. That's pretty much everything that's up here, other than like AMC, who is... He's honestly similar to like a physical mage in that he has really strong ranged poke and burst damage, and also has some self-sustain. Like, AMC is just really good. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this one. I'm sure a lot of you Assault mains will have criticism on where I place some of these gods, but I think this is generally a pretty solid list. I do play a fair bit of Assault, but I'm not like an Assault main or anything, so definitely let me know if you disagree with any of my placements down below, and I will catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.